And then finally, we wrap up with this idea of life. What kind of life do we live? I want to make this incredibly short. I don't want to over preach it. I'd rather you see it, I think. Cross. Jesus says, you know the way to life? Life to the full is this. It's surrender. Jesus says, I opened up my hands and I stretched out my hands and they drove nails through my hands. It's surrender. And what Jesus, I believe, calls to us in this idea of life is surrender. You can trust God. Have faith. God's got you. You can live your life open-handed. You can live your life in a way that you don't have to grasp so much. God's got you. You can give away what you have. You can receive from others. Some would say, well, maybe that's a little harsh. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 24 and 26, Jesus says to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. What? My own way? I'm smart. I know things. Jesus, I know you don't really know what it's like to be here in 2022. You were here 2,000 years ago. People riding camels and donkeys and stuff. We got motorcycles now. Jesus, you don't know what it's like. You must give up your own way. Take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life, for my sake, you will save it. And what benefit, these are the words of Jesus, and what benefit do you gain if you get the whole world but lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? And so Jesus gave up his life. And I'll read one more passage. Would you all stand with me, please? We're going to receive communion in a second. Nobody took Jesus' life from him. And nobody can make you give up your life. I suppose not spiritually speaking. God's not going to force you to open your fist, is what I'm trying to say. God will not just force you to let go of things. You're invited to follow Jesus, and you're invited to open your hands. Jesus says in John chapter 10, the Father loves me because I am willing to give up my life in order that I may receive it back again. He says, no one takes my life away from me. I give it up of my own free will. I have the right to give it up, and I have the right to take it back. This is what the Father has commanded me to do. And then it says, again, there was division among the people because of these words. Many of them were saying, he has a demon, he's crazy. Why do you even listen to him? Promise you. You start to live your life with open hands, people are going to say you're crazy. Don't you know someone can take your stuff? Don't you know if you don't punch them in the face, they're going to hit you again? Don't you know that if you don't step over somebody at the job, you're not going to get the job? Then you maybe say, I don't really want the job. If I get the job, it means I got to work 80 hours more a week. And if I get the job, it means I got to lose all my sleep. And if I get the job, I got to leave maybe I don't want your stinking job. Maybe I'm going to trust God. But don't you know you can get a bigger house? Don't you see the price of the house? Get a big house. I want to retire, man. Jesus stretched out his arms in his own free will. Here's what I'm asking us to do. As a church, over the next month or so, I'm giving 8.5 years of ministry here back to God. I want you to listen to me. I've got blood, sweat, and tears in this place. I've made a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of people who've been here who aren't. There's a lot of people who I'm hoping will continue to be with me. I've made a lot of mistakes. But I have given blood, sweat, and tears to this place. What I've built, and I've built it with people who are incredibly talented, incredibly loving, incredibly Christ-focused, and I got the chance and the opportunity and the privilege to stand with them, and together we have built something for 8.5 years. I believe God's asking me to lay it all back on the table with open hands and saying, God, I won't hang on to something. I won't clinch it and act like it's mine. It's yours. And I believe God is calling us as a church to take a look at everything we do from the parking lot to the drive home and saying, how are we showing the love of Jesus to people? How would we react if somebody was different than us in some way that you find offensive? How would we react if they came in here? Let's take a look at it. And it starts, to be very honest with you, with everything that happens up here on this stage. It starts with my sermons. It starts with our band. It starts with the way we do the Lord's Supper. This is a reflection of who we are. And I don't know exactly what God is going to do. When I say that, I want you to hear me. I do not know what God is going to do. I'm just opening my hands and saying, God, here it is. From now until Advent, until Christmas time, God, here it is. Speak to us. I think there's going to be some adjustments, but I don't know. I think we might get quieter. I think we might get more prayerful. I think my sermons will get shorter and more focused. I think we're going to get more organized. I think people are going to leave here feeling closer to Jesus than when they came in. Now, some people, I'm reminded, some people say, man, as soon as you say the word change, people freak out. They clench up, man, like a baby. Change. And to those folks, I say I understand. And I just ask you, do you want us to be less prayerful? Do you want my sermons to be even longer and less focused? Do you want us to be less organized? Do you want people to walk out of here feeling less close to Jesus? These are good things. And I'd like for you to pray for us as a church, especially on Tuesday evening. I'm going to meet with the band. I'm going to share my heart. I'm going to ask every single person of the band to come along, and I'm going to ask them to release their hands and open their hands as well, and let's put all the pieces back and say, how do we best communicate the love of God up here on a Sunday morning together? And then we're going to work through it. And I don't know what it's going to look like as we move through October. I think it's going to be quieter. I think there'll be fewer people up here. All in an attempt, an effort to hear the voice of God. So I'd like us to receive communion.